Very pleased to be able to bring you this opportunity to get a little more intimate, interact a little further with some of the experts who have contributed to our program over the past couple of days. I'd like to introduce once again Eric Flute, VP Product Marketing of Verifone. Also have with us Mickey Haynes, Mobile Solutions Executive of SAP, and Mike Versace, Research Director at IDC. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to take a couple of moments throughout our executive roundtables this morning. We'll get the opinions from those who have them, and we'll get some answers from those who have them, but we'll also give you the opportunity to give these folks a quiz. Make sure that when you walk away from here at noon today and head off to the expo, that you've got answers to those pressing questions, that you're ready to go ahead and execute your mobile strategy. And if we could get our slides up. All right. Our session focuses on enterprise challenges for mobile commerce adoption. And as a background, what I've done is I've collected some selected, interesting components of a survey that was conducted by Information Week, and that was conducted back in March of this year in advance of our conference. It researched the opinions of some 1,182 respondents in North America, and 895 of those folks were involved or familiar with their organization's mobile commerce strategy. So this background comes from IT professionals, from marketing professionals, and also from folks in the telecom sector. Peter Rasavi is going to be reviewing that as well in a little more detail in Solutions Theater. So if there's some aspect of this that you just want to drill into a little further, be sure to drop by the Solutions Theater, and Peter would be happy to get into that with you. How important is mobile commerce to your organization? And I think overwhelmingly the response here is 89% of these organizations that were surveyed say this is important to them. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone that's here, and that's probably a good reason why you're here. But as we drill into this, I think we start to see some uncertainties, and that's one of the areas that we want to explore today. What's your stance on mobile commerce? And almost 3/4 of this view says mobile commerce is positively or enthusiastically accepted by the organization. Again, really, really positive, and I think so telling that this isn't just a distraction. This just isn't a fad. It may mean a little more work on my plate, but we're going to go ahead and do that. This is a very telling slide, and it's perhaps maybe a little difficult to see because it tells so much. What are the top inhibitors to mobile commerce for your organization? You know, in some respects, I'm not surprised by what I've seen. These top concerns: compliance, consumer perception of mobile commerce being unsafe, a lack of security. And for IT and IS organizations, for marketing, it means a very disruptive time for business models. It means a very disruptive time for organizational structures. And I think that's probably a good spot for us to start. You know, in terms, gentlemen, of these inhibitors or perceived inhibitors, are these truly reflective? I think the answer is yes. I mean, we've conducted a survey. This is how people perceive this. do we have the opportunity to overcome these perceptions? Do we have the opportunity to address these? Just how critical are these inhibitors at this point in time? So I think I'll start with you, Mickey. In terms of your view as SAP, your experiences, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we see here is accurate. In my past, I've worked exclusively with retailers for the last 12 or 13 years and putting together mobile commerce strategies. Was at Home Depot for 3 or 4 years and did their whole mobile commerce strategy. So I think the biggest challenge that retailers face, and I think one of the first things is what is mobile commerce? A lot of what we talk about today is really kind of mobile payment. And I think mobile payment is not really all that compelling to retailers. At least there hasn't been anything presented today that's really compelling retailers to go out and do mobile payment. Every CFO of every major retailer out there is trying to figure out how to reduce what they're paying in of course, credit card or other transactions. And so until there's a mobile payment solution that helps them reduce those transaction fees, mobile payment is not their focus. So what most retailers do, most retailers have a divided strategy in how they approach their customer. They have a digital commerce team that runs their e-commerce channel who usually owns mobile. And then they have a store team that owns store experience. So when you ask a retailer, what is mobile commerce and how is it going to impact your business, it really depends on who you're talking to, whether you're getting the digital commerce guy or the store operations guy or the guy who's in charge of mobile payments. But I think operationally, until they figure out that they've all got to get together and unify their strategy and figure out how they're going to market their customer and deal with their customer in a way that's profitable to the business, I think that's the biggest challenge they face. All of the technical hurdles and everything can be overcome. Number one thing retailers have to figure out is how do I use mobile? This smartphone that customers are carrying, this is potentially the best marketing tool ever invented. Is this better? Okay. So the mobile device is potentially the best marketing channel ever invented. But today I'm not really seeing anything that's helping me really increase my sales or that's paying off. So how do I use mobile to increase sales or to improve that customer experience? And I think that's the big challenge is essentially, where's the money?
We've spent a lot of time, Mickey, talking about where's the money and how do I get the money. And I recognize that in the eyes of the consumer, particularly in light of some things that have happened in the past month or so, there's a great deal of emphasis being put on security. There's a great deal of emphasis being placed on fraud and data protection. I think that we have the technology solutions here. I think that we have the opportunity to protect the enterprise data. We have the opportunity here to protect consumers and make them feel confident that mobile commerce is actually the viable and right way to shop. I'm going to ask now, Eric, Verifone's made some tremendous leaps here in terms of their role in mobile commerce and mobile point of sale. I'm going to ask you to comment on the perceptions that are presented here.
Sure. So, there are two issues, right? There's privacy and security, and both are potential concerns for consumers and potential inhibitors. So let's address security first. As Verifone, that's what we do. I talked about it up here yesterday. It's we wake up every day and go to sleep every day thinking about security. We secure trillions of dollars of commerce in all channels every year, flowing through either our terminals, our software, our gateways, whatever it might be. So we've gotten pretty good at securing cardholder data, securing private data, making sure that it's encrypted where it needs to be encrypted and decrypted as far upstream as possible. So I feel confident that we're doing well with that. And to be honest, with the move to mobile, if implemented correctly, it's leaps and bounds more secure than anything we have out there today in the traditional payment, credit, debit card world. So feel good about that. And as long as merchants follow, best practices and use leading edge technology, I think they can feel good about that as well. What they do with data outside of payment data, data gathered on consumers, how they secure that data, how they use that data, how they sell it, how they share it with partners. That's an elective sort of process. That's not something that Verifone necessarily gets involved in, but clearly, and this has been true for many years, as we all take part in the e-commerce world and have our statements emailed to us and give our data to Facebook or PayPal, to use the speakers this morning, they need to make sure that they're clear and communicate how they use the data and when they use the data. So that said, I think both parts can be addressed. I mean, if consumers are concerned about security, we can address that. If consumers are concerned about privacy, we can address that even in a mobile commerce world.
I agree completely, by the way. I think mobile has the potential to be far more secure than anything we've done yet, including plastic or e-commerce transactions. And we haven't necessarily made the solutions standardized enough yet that retailers and consumers are confident in which is going to be the solution that wins at the end. But mobile can be far more secure than anything else. We've got multi-factor authentication and encryption and everything else you need. You've got access to the cloud. You've got everything from NFC. So security really we need to address that. I really think it's a standardization issue more really than security. We just need to standardize.
Mike, from your perspective, and I kind of stand back and look at this, and what I've heard is, hey, we've got the solution to this. And I think one of the objectives here is to make consumers feel comfortable that the solution is there and that it's something that they don't need to spend time thinking about. At the same point in time, let's put into perspective the fears or the concerns of the enterprise, the ISIT organizations, the risk management organizations, and how they view this. Because I think what we've heard here is, hey, the technology's good. How do we bring this to the next step, Mike? And what have you seen?
Well, I think it's a great survey, but we've seen these top three things on the top of surveys about new channels in payments for the last 30 years. When we introduced ATMs, point of sale devices, we had surveys like this, and I would bet you if we look back 30 years, we'd see these top three, sort of technology barriers at the top of the list. So from a risk manager's perspective, you've got to understand that these are solvable problems. They're solvable problems that have a specific risk-reward model associated with them. And the risk-reward model is tied directly to what Mickey was talking about earlier, which are things that fall lower on this list, which I think should be much higher, which is how do I really define the business that I'm trying to grow and plan and develop using mobile and mobile commerce solutions. So I think from a risk perspective, the risk manager, whether they're in a retailer, in an operations role, or they're at a bank or a processor, they need to sort of first understand what the business, clearly understand how much risk there is in the business strategy and what that is. And then understand what investments need to be made with firms like Verifone and others to take care of some of these, these are technological hurdles that clearly we've jumped over many times in the payment space. We jumped over these things when we created the MICR line for checks. We jumped over these things when we wrote Reg E and put that into the market in the early 80s. We've jumped over these technology barriers and many other examples. So I think from a risk manager's perspective, the focus has to be clearly push the business to understand the opportunity, the plan, the investment requirement, and then use those investment requirements to just knock these quote-unquote inhibitors off the radar. And I absolutely think they can be done, and they're being done today as we sit here on the stage.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to take just a moment now to have you ask your questions of the panel before we move along to our next point of discussion. Shara is out in the audience. If you just raise your hand, please, if you have a question, we'll be happy to have the panel address it. And I'm blinded by the light up here, Shara.
Share group?
No hands. All right.
Charb, just pick somebody.
Yeah.
We'll move along. Mobile device segmentation. And I think this is also a very interesting topic, and I think one that some time was spent on yesterday in the Application Developers Alliance has addressed this to some extent, but it still obviously presents us with a challenge. Does or will your mobile commerce strategy segment between types of mobile devices? And I think it's an interesting discussion in as much as it gives rise to talk of unification. And that's something that we'll drill into in the panel and in our subsequent panel. Are we going to build a mobile app? Are we going to move forward with a mobile website? And if we do decide to move ahead with a mobile app, are we prepared to invest in what is necessary to support that over a number of different OS environments? And I'm going to start with you, Mike. And clearly you've seen this. It's in some cases quite a divisive discussion in an organization. Again, I think the technology is there. We have the ability to overcome this. But if you're sitting down today talking about a strategy, it's become top of mind.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Eric, you were saying this earlier, or one of the other, or Mickey, or one of the other presenters, but I mean, we're always going to have innovation in the market, so there's always going to be multiple platforms to support and strategies to support them. I think the right approach, though, is to know your customer. Know your customer base. Know what that platform, the most prevalent platform is for the most profitable customers, or the most profitable set of prospects that you have, and design for that to begin with, and get that right. Get it right. But
and we've heard that over the past couple of days too.
Yeah,
this whole philosophy of designing in instead of designing out.
Well, that's the other point, is that I think, and we see in some of these charts, that the mobile strategy is first, let me put my web platform or my web environment on mobile. Let me move that environment to mobile. And I would argue that's the absolutely wrong strategy. I think we have to think more, particularly in the retail space, about designing capability, content, interaction, user experience, identity, defining all of that from mobility in. That's why companies like REI, for example, have been so successful with their platform. They're designing from the consumer in to the enterprise. And I think many companies think, as they make or create mobility strategies, that they've got to take their existing infrastructure and figure out the right way to expose that in a mobile environment. And I'm not sure that's the right approach. I mean, that reminds me of, back, 20 years ago when we were putting green screens into browsers. I think that is fundamentally the wrong approach. We have so many apps, capabilities, functionalities on a mobile device that we'll never have on a browser, right? Voice is one, it just sort of comes to mind. Certainly we have video, we have so many applications and integration that's so much easier than on traditional level 1 or level 2 technology. So I think the strategy is designing from mobility in. That's got to be the application strategy going forward, and not infrastructure out.
Mickey, designing in doesn't need to be a preclusive exercise, right? And SAP is obviously an organization that has enterprise customers throughout the globe who are heavily invested in infrastructure and IT technology over decades. But designing in, it really isn't that difficult. It really doesn't need to be an inhibitor.
Well, what's difficult is when you look at the scale of what happens when you start trying to look at all of the different device types that are out there and trying to create kind of a custom experience for each one. I think the answer, are you going to target all devices or are you going to target specific devices? I think the answer is probably both. I think where mobile web strategy is important, if you talk to most retailers today, they're saying that 25 to 50%, depending on who you talk to, of their traffic now coming to their e-commerce site is actually coming through mobile devices. So you kind of have to mobile optimize your website, and you would do that in a way that looks good on pretty much any kind of device. When you start getting into a device-specific strategy and designing really great interfaces for all of the different iOS devices, Android devices, I think Windows Phone, BlackBerry, hopefully will pick up in market share, and then we'll have to deal with them as well. We have a large retailer in the UK who has over 100 people on their mobile development team today, and they only really target 3 devices. To do what they want to do, they know they have to go out and hire probably 200 more people. So for retailers to essentially become software companies to create all of these different apps and different strategies on all of the different devices, especially if you're operating in different countries, we think software companies need to help and bridge that gap. So that's a big part of our strategy is how can we ease the burden instead of you having to go out there and build a whole bunch of native apps custom from scratch, just like people used to do in the e-commerce world. You have to go build all your own websites. Now there are e-commerce platforms. Nobody builds their own website anymore. We think mobile is headed in the same direction. But I think a key part of the mobile strategy, today we talk about mobilizing e-commerce sites. We have to mobilize the store. And what goes in the store and the customer experience as they're shopping in the store. And so simply mobilizing your e-commerce site does not help you with that. So if we're going to interact with the customer at the point of decision, which I believe is the value of mobile commerce, increasing sales by 25% when they're shopping in your store using mobile, we have to find new ways of doing this because simply mobilizing the e-commerce channel is not going to do that. We have to find ways of reaching out to the customer in the store, cross-selling, upselling, and making those transactions happen in the store.
Exactly, Mickey. And I know Eric, from Verifone's perspective, certainly a company that has great roots in terms of investment of point of sale. This has been not necessarily an evolutionary change, but an absolutely revolutionary change in terms of hardware, in terms of, as Mickey said, the interaction with the consumer. So in terms of Verifone's view of this, do we need to be concerned as enterprise organizations, as ISIT organizations? Do we really need to look at the segmentation piece, or is this something that can be solved by others?
No, look, I mean, Verifone doesn't make consumer, really consumer mobile apps, right? So we're working more on the enterprise side, and in general, I think these kinds of discussions are relevant. They're technical in nature. They're really about dollars. How do you duplicate your mobile apps across multiple platforms? But I agree with what was said earlier. It's really it's much more important to do it right and make sure you blend channels and provide value to the consumer and all these standard concerns that you would have than it is about which platform you support on day 1 or day 2 or day 3. I can tell you that as platforms affect us, we obviously deal in this mobile revolution with all different kinds of merchants that all have their own preferences for platforms as they support mobile inside the store, right, in a mobile POS type of environment. And what I can tell you is that to date, most of our offering has been on iOS. Because obviously, with the iOS revolution has driven a lot of this change. I can tell you that Windows plays a very large role, which is obviously evident in our announcement with Lenovo yesterday in the Windows tablet. So both iOS and Windows are playing a huge role in the enterprise world. Android to a lesser extent, although there's probably some growth there as well. So these guys are probably better qualified to comment on the consumer side, but I can tell you on the internal infrastructure side, a multi-platform is a concern as well. And right now the focus is on iOS and Windows, and then Android probably second.
All right. Thank you, Eric. An opportunity for the audience if you have any questions with respect to device segmentation and strategies. Shara will look for hands.
Is there an audience?
I see an audience
I
here.
don't see it.
I think to some extent we've already hit on a couple of the key themes that are coming out of this survey. Key technologies for mobile commerce success: security, payments, cross-platform applications. And I know that we could sit here and we could tear these things down and we could ultimately say there are technology solutions that are available in terms of the enterprise. There are technology solutions in terms of what you can put in the hands of the consumer. But in terms of the ecosystem as a whole, what's the most pressing challenge? And what we're hearing here is a little different, and frankly, it surprises me. Make it easy to access, make it easy to use, I think are the two messages that come out of this. Respondents have identified various challenges, and probably the foremost here is less expensive cellular data plans, more ubiquitous Wi-Fi, and the difficulty in using payment applications and interfaces. So this is an interesting piece too. It's a recognition that there's a challenge in the hands of the consumers. So guys, I'm going to start with you, Mickey. Make it easy to access. And I'm not surprised. I'm almost shocked by the responses. Cellular data plans are suddenly a big issue here.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the outcome of these questions. We're talking about cellular connectivity, and honestly, I believe we're going to see cellular connectivity get more expensive, not less expensive. I think we're going to see, as LTE picks up and starts spreading around the globe, in-building penetration is going to get worse, not better. Wi-Fi is going to become more important, not less. If you're a retailer, if you don't already have a Wi-Fi strategy, you need one. That's just going to be a basic service that your customers are going to expect. So get a Wi-Fi strategy. That's strongly recommended. But I think the real ecosystem challenge is not really external to the retailer. The real ecosystem challenge the retailers face is internal. You've got two different teams. You've got an e-commerce team that built everything for digital commerce. You have a store team that built everything for the stores. The biggest challenge that retailers face to do mobile commerce is bringing those two together and creating a multi-channel, omni-channel strategy. That's going to require basically blowing away everything that's been done for the last 15 years. You need new technology, you need omni-channel, multi-channel back-ends, you need omni-channel strategies, and that by far is a bigger challenge to any retailer than whether the customer has good cellular connectivity, in my opinion.
Mike, are you surprised by this?
Oh, this is exactly right. These are, the big challenges, the most pressing challenges are inside the enterprise right now. And they're very much related to the siloed in operations, the silos in applications, and legacy technology. I look at these, the results of this specific question, and I think I look at all of this, and this, to me, looks like lack of organizational strategy. This is, we've got these issues that Mickey was very eloquent about. Internally, we can't resolve them, so we're going to sort of push the problem outside.
It's not our problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way it looks to me. Less expensive, cellular, I agree. That's, we're lucky we got what we have right now, I think, fundamentally. And as content ramps up, cellular is going to become much more expensive. Absolutely, every form of retail has to have a Wi-Fi strategy. If you don't right now for your complete branch, your complete network of stores, then you're a little bit behind the curve. So this, to me, looks like lack of organizational strategy than anything else.
It's just another indicator of unification is going to be a critical element of successful mobile commerce strategy. What do you think, Eric?
I agree with these guys. It seems like this is a case of picking the answer you best understand, don't necessarily agree with. I don't really know what HTML5 is, so I'll pick the thing that I understand about data plans. So I'm dismissive of this as well.
All right, audience, questions? Comments?
See, now there is one, but nobody sees him.
Shara, on your way?
Prize for being the first question asker.
Yes,
That's right.
free bottle of water.
Free cellular plan for 60 days.
Solves everything.
This is going to be a loaded question.
We like loaded questions.
So first of all, a comment regarding your chart. Interestingly enough, none of the percentages there represent the biggest worry of all consumers, and that's the life cycle of the battery. Nothing else matters, to tell you the truth. Everybody's scared about the battery dying in the middle of the transaction and not being able to reconcile the transaction at the point of sale. So that's just a comment. Now,
That's an interesting comment as well. And the perception here is an enterprise organization that doesn't seem to think that battery life is a big deal, that an organizational structure that supports this is a big deal, but really it's someone else's problem.
exactly what affects all of us.
Well, and I think, if you look at the history of NFC, and NFC was designed really, 10 years ago, before there were really smartphones, and NFC was designed to sort of work without the battery and work offline. I don't know that battery is going to be a huge issue going forward. I think it's a pretty simple solution for a retailer to, stick a charger there at the point of sale so you can charge up before you do your transaction. But I think really how important is the mobile device in actually consummating that transaction? And I think to the retailer, it's not a matter of the mobile device doing the transaction. We don't care. But the reason that the mobile device is so important for the future of retail, and we think the transaction is really just the end game, we want you using your smartphones when you shop because we can increase your sales by 25%. So that's what's in it for the retailer. The transaction part of it, if all we're going to do is a transaction, we can do that with cloud. You can sign in with, like PayPal is doing with PayPal at point of sale, which we implemented at Home Depot. So there are all kinds of ways of doing the transaction in offline mode, whether your battery's dead or not. But we want that battery working when you're here because we want you to shop and buy more. And I think that's, actually, just kind of hitting along that story, connectivity is also a problem, right? So a lot of retailers are, especially in the UK, I think, coming up with offline scenarios. You want your product catalog to be available offline because it's a richer, faster, better consumer experience. You can do things in train stations and on airplanes that you couldn't normally do. So I think offline strategy, battery life, they're important, but I don't know about that they're that important for the transaction.
Eric, what do you think?
I once again would agree. It is a corner case concern, just like not having coverage or data. At the moment of the transaction is a corner case concern. It will happen. It will get better over time. What we just talked about, Wi-Fi will get better. LTE coverage will get better, although there's some in-building concerns, of course. Battery life on devices will get better. I don't see a world in the immediate future where you're going to stop carrying all forms of plastic. By the time that happens, we'll probably all have, multi-week battery life or a little nuclear power plant in our pocket or whatever might happen, perhaps a flux capacitor of some sort. These are all official Verifone statements. Feel free to quote me on those. Not a huge concern, but definitely not on the top 10.
Fair enough. And the second part of the question is what MCX is trying to do with the top merchants. And it addresses pretty much the 13% of the bottom there. They're trying to stop using the old models, all the rusty rails of the last 50 years of the payments industry. But most importantly, they're trying to create new technology in embarking into a wallet that will include applications from each merchant. How do you think the mobile adoption will affect the migration to EMV? And I'm raising that the 2015 and 2017 are two key dates, as we all know, for transition of liability. But most importantly, it's not chip and pin like the rest of the world, and it's 20 years old almost. It's chip and signature. And how is that, do you think, going to influence what happens on the mobile world?
So when I was at Home Depot, I was ahead of our mobile payment strategy, and so I was actually kind of around when MCX got kicked off as one of the people who looked at some of the mobile payment solutions that were out there, really did not see business value from a retailer perspective, and said we needed to find another way. I believe that the best value that mobile adds today is not mobilizing a credit card. It's finding other more efficient ways to pay. And I know most of the bankers in the room don't necessarily want to hear this, but simply ability to mobilize a check transaction. Do something like that to simply move money over ACH, EFT, and that's what MCX is going to be focused on. They're going to improve upon what ACH does today. They're going to make it very cheap, very inexpensive, and very secure and very easy to move money. I think they're definitely a force to be reckoned with. I think you have to look at the players there, the strategy behind it, and realize that they're going to do some big things. How far they're able to take that, if they're able to create sort of this, I call the super app, which is one app that lets you do multi-retailer mobile commerce within a single app. Whether MCX is going to be the channel for that, or whether it's going to be somebody like Facebook or somebody else that might have that kind of super app capability, I think that remains to be seen. But in terms of a payment mechanism, absolutely pay attention to what they're doing. And if you're in the mobile payment space, you need to have something that's going to do something similar to what MCX is doing.
Can I add a comment to that? Sorry, my mic just came back on. I'd like to add a comment to that, specifically address the comment about EMV. So just to set the record straight, and I live this stuff every day, so I'm pretty passionate about it. NFC underpinnings are EMV. So don't get into a habit of looking at EMV versus NFC, and there's some sort of some sort of war between the two, or that they're fundamentally incompatible. They're both going to happen. We're still using cash. We're still using checks. Don't think we're not going to be using cards. Don't think that your grandmother is going to be using a smartphone in the next 5 years to pay at the checkout, okay, because she's still writing checks today. So we're going to see the EMV transition happen to both contact and contactless, and to NFC, meaning mobile phone based as well. The two can live in harmony, and if you're a merchant, you should be planning for both. You can't. That's not a race where you want to bet on one or the other. They're both gonna happen. And that's two, but there's other options as well. PayPal just came up. There are cloud wallets that you need to plan for. There's MCX, which is going to be barcode based initially. You need to plan for that. So as a merchant, you can't make the mistake of lining all these acronyms up and picking one and going with it, because you will, no matter what, you'll miss out.
All right, thanks, sir.
Add one point to that really quick, and I agree with that, but we used to say, at the Fed that payment change is evolutionary, not revolutionary. But I'm really wondering whether we can still say that today, and I think the fundamental difference that we have today is mobility. And I'm just wondering if the mobility and consumerized IT, consumerized data that we have today will really drive real revolutionary change in payment systems. And my bet is it probably is going to, we'll probably see the largest sea change in payment systems than we have, I don't know, in the last 30 or so years. And it's all based on this new platform of IT we all get to play with. Big data, analytics, social, cloud, and mobility.
Sounds like you just gave an SAP commercial there.
Excellent question.
Sorry.
Excellent question, and guys, great insights. Just in the interest of time, this will be our final discussion point. So in our previous slide, we talked about what's the most pressing ecosystem challenge, and clearly the respondents didn't think the challenge was in their hands. And we've kind of just brought the question around now to what's the top priority now in addressing mobile commerce for your organization? And I think what we see out of this is rather telling. The first response is, well, we're going to mobilize our web presence. And then we're going to address payment, and then we're going to address loyalty, and we're probably going to take advantage of location-based service technologies. Now, I've heard some discussion a little early on about, whoa, wait a minute, mobilizing the web's probably not such a good idea. But in terms of going to market strategies and getting out there quickly, perhaps it is. I'll turn this over now, and I'll ask Mickey, from your perspective, what do you see here?
I think the most important thing that retailers have to do is they have to realize that they're not going to get where they need to be by sort of taking this point solution, piecemeal strategy where you kind of divide mobile up across the enterprise and you have 18 different teams doing things 18 different ways. You need to have a mobility center of excellence. It needs to be a cross-functional team. It needs to be working both with the e-commerce team and with the store mobility team, probably reporting directly to somebody like at the CEO level, something like that, where they are going to be the ones who are going to force this kind of collaboration within the enterprise. I think that's the most important organizational change that retailers can start making today that's going to help bring these two together. I think you have to make your e-commerce page mobile friendly. You have to do some things around that. That's a good starting strategy, but you need to be asking the question, how are we going to use mobility to make money? And I think that's in the store.
Unification again.
Absolutely.
Eric.
I'll make a very short comment. If you don't have a holistic new commerce strategy today, then it doesn't matter what you pick first because you will fail.
The rest of these they're just a non-issue at that point.
Yeah, it's too late to go. I mean, if this was 2006 and you started prioritizing, my mobile web, let's mess around with that and then we'll do something else, that's fine. But it's 2013, your competition is out there, with holistic strategies, trying to create a new consumer experience like we talked about yesterday. And if you do it piecemeal, or I forget the terminology you just used, but if you do this one at a time, set priorities and re-emerge in 2017 with 2 out of 5 priorities done, you should go home.
What do you think, Mike? Is this just tweaking the edge?
No, I think this is looking at it exactly the way Eric described it. You know, what we're doing, what mobility does is it allows retail to really recreate the consumer experience. And that should be the most pressing mobile commerce challenge.
Design
what
in.
is that experience going to look like given the capabilities that not only that I have as a retailer, but what my customer has in their hand or in their pocket. And it's, the payment thing will happen. No doubt there's going to be many options for that. But creating that compelling, reducing the friction, eliminating the friction between the consumer and the retailer, and making that experience as pleasant, as simple, and as elegant as possible really is the most pressing challenge.
Mobile is the overarching strategy, and probably the key indicator that an organization has got it is somebody's got mobile in their title, Chief Mobile Marketing Officer.
Yeah, right.
All right, just a couple minutes for audience questions before we wrap up with our panel. Shara, got a couple questions down the front.
Can you guys speak to a couple examples specifically of retailers who are doing the mobile experience in the store as well? I know you mentioned Home Depot because you implemented that, but aside from Home Depot, what else are some other examples?
So I think you're going to see grocery take the lead at how mobile works in the store to help do cross-selling, upselling. Loblaw in Canada is looking really good. I think you've got Tesco in the UK in grocery. You've got Woolworths and Coles in Australia. So I think grocery is where it's going to happen first. To get a customer to actually download your mobile app and keep it on their phone and use it, you really have to be a retailer that has sort of these high frequency of visits kind of thing. And so I think look at grocery, and that's where it's going to start.
Next question, please.
Hi, we talk a lot about retail consumers here at this conference, but I'm really interested in knowing about experience with business to business. Have you guys had any experience in integrating like a mobile experience in the omni-channel for, say, a business to business? I'd like to hear your comments about that to any of the speakers.
Well, at Home Depot, we had a two-part strategy for mobile commerce. We definitely had our walk-in customers, our consumers, but we also have millions of professional contractors out there who are our business consumers. And unfortunately, I would say our initial mobile commerce strategy did not take those people into effect nearly as importantly as they should have been. When you're putting together a mobile commerce strategy, if you think about an app strategy, you want to go after your most frequent, most loyal customers first. And in the home improvement industry, it really was those B2B people, not necessarily the home improvement guy that comes into your store 3 times a year. So going after those people, it's really a different strategy. Payments are different, loyalty programs are different, catalogs are different, it's completely different. And so you may need a separate strategy for going after those business customers as opposed to your regular consumers.
Mike, I'm sure you see a lot of that. Where's the money here?
Where's the money? I don't know, could you restate?
Where's the money here? So if I'm looking at this from an ecosystem perspective, and to the point that's made here, B2B versus B2C.
Oh man, it's gonna differ, I think, from vertical market to vertical market. I think it's and it certainly is going to depend on the product and goods, the products and services, the goods that you make available. So I think it's. I don't know. I don't have I'd ask Mickey or Eric. They might have a better perspective on that than I do.
Yeah, there was one other example that we actually have, and don't mean to sound like an SAP commercial here, but one of our customers, Cisco Foods, actually did implement a very successful B2B strategy. They have restaurants all over the country, and they created a B2B app so that these restaurants can now order food and supplies directly from Cisco Foods. So this was a great example. This was showcased actually just recently on the Food Network on one of the shows. So that's an example of a B2B solution that really works and is very powerful.
All right. Thanks so much, audience. And I'm sorry, we got one more?
Yeah, just a comment on that is I've seen a lot of data on business to consumer behavior, but that is something that I'm really interested in knowing more about is the business to business. I'd like to know how vendors are behaving with newer technology like in the mobile space.
Sure, yeah, grab me after. Happy to talk with you more.
All right, thank you so much. That's going to wrap up the panel. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And audience, thank you so much for your interaction. We're going to reset here, bring our next session up, Enterprise Roundtable, and assembling the technology building blocks. We'll be right back. If you want to charge up your coffee or your water, please do so. Gentlemen, thank you so much.